They watched you take that hit. They watched you absorb the betrayal that should have shattered you into pieces scattered across the floor. And here's what nobody told you while you were picking yourself up in silence. The whole world was taking notes. Every single person who witnessed how you carried yourself through that storm just learned something they'll carry for the rest of their lives. You didn't just survive that betrayal, chosen one. You became the textbook. You became the standard. You became living proof that grace under pressure isn't just possible. It's devastating to everyone who bet on your collapse. Press that like button and subscribe, because what's coming next is the blueprint they never wanted circulating. And chosen one, if you're still standing after what they put you through, then you've earned every second of what I'm about to break down. This isn't just your story anymore. This is a masterclass in power, and you didn't even realize you were teaching it. Thank you for being part of this mission to show the world what real strength looks like when it doesn't need to scream. Now let's get into it. Because the way you moved through that betrayal didn't just impact your life. It rewired how an entire generation understands dignity, boundaries, and self-respect. And they're terrified because you made it look effortless. Here's what happened that nobody expected. When they betrayed you, when they stabbed you in the back with a smile still painted on their face, the entire room held its breath, waiting for your explosion. They wanted the meltdown. They needed the chaos. They were counting on you to scream, to cry, to make a scene that would justify their narrative about you being unstable, emotional, too much to handle. But you stood there and said absolutely nothing. Not because you were weak, not because you were confused, but because you understood something they never will. Silence isn't empty. Silence is a weapon when wielded by someone who's done explaining themselves to people, committed to misunderstanding them. Your silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. It was you deciding in real time that your energy was too valuable to waste on people who were already writing fiction about you anyway. And that choice, that single moment of restraint, it sent shockwaves through everyone watching. Because suddenly they realized they were dealing with someone who plays a completely different game. Think about it for a second. In a world addicted to noise, to reaction, to instant emotional gratification, you showed up with composure. While everyone expected fireworks, you gave them stillness. While they waited for you to defend yourself, you simply withdrew your presence like cutting off oxygen to a fire. No explanation, no justification, no performance. Just a clean exit that left them scrambling to understand what just happened. That's not coldness. That's mastery. That's what happens when someone evolves past the need for closure, from people who were never honest to begin with. And here's the part that's burning them alive right now. Your silence taught everyone in that room more than any speech could have. It taught them that dignity doesn't argue, that self-respect doesn't debate, that when you truly know your worth, you don't need to convince anyone else of it. You showed an entire generation that the most powerful response to betrayal isn't revenge or rage, it's detachment. It's the ability to look someone in the eye, recognize exactly what they did, and choose peace over proving a point. That's the lesson they're still trying to process while you've already moved 3 chapters ahead. They thought your boundaries were suggestions. They thought your kindness was weakness. They thought they could keep crossing lines because you'd always forgive, always understand, always give one more chance. But then came that moment, that final straw, that last betrayal that flipped a switch inside you that can never be flipped back. And instead of another warning, instead of another conversation, instead of another attempt to make them see reason, You built a wall so solid that even their apologies bounced off it like rubber balls against concrete. What you did wasn't petty, it wasn't cruel, it was necessary. And everyone who witnessed it just learned the most important lesson about self-preservation. You showed them that boundaries without consequences are just suggestions, that forgiveness without change is just enabling, that love without respect is just slow poison. You demonstrated in real time that there comes a point where protecting your peace matters more than preserving a connection that was destroying you from the inside out. And that demonstration is now living rent-free in the minds of everyone who watched you do it. The younger generation, especially, they saw something in your response they'd never seen modeled before. They saw someone refuse to shrink, someone refuse to apologize for having standards, someone refuse to light themselves on fire to keep others warm. In a culture that constantly pressures people to be understanding, to be forgiving, to give endless chances, you stood firm and said enough, not with aggression, not with drama, just with an unshakable certainty that you deserved better, and you weren't negotiating on that point anymore. That's revolutionary in a world that teaches people to tolerate disrespect in the name of keeping the peace. Your boundary didn't just protect you, it gave permission to thousands of people watching to protect themselves. It showed them that walking away from toxicity isn't abandonment, it's liberation. That cutting off access to people who abuse that access isn't mean, it's mandatory. That you can love someone from a distance or not at all if staying close costs you your sanity. The monument you built out of that boundary is now a landmark that others are using to navigate their own situations. You became the proof that it's possible to stand up without being loud, to be firm without being aggressive, to protect yourself without becoming the villain in someone else's distorted story. While they were spiraling, creating narratives, spreading stories, trying to control the damage to their reputation, you were doing something that absolutely broke their minds. You were thriving. You were posting pictures with genuine smiles. You were focusing on your goals. You were building your life like they never even existed. And that composure, that refusal to engage in the mudslinging, that decision to let your peace speak louder than their propaganda, it exposed them in ways they never anticipated. Because when someone accuses you of being toxic but you're glowing, when someone calls you unstable but you're succeeding, when someone paints you as the problem but you're clearly the solution, people start asking questions. Your composure became the mirror that reflected their chaos back at them. Every lie they told lost credibility because your life was telling a different story. Every manipulation they attempted fell flat because you weren't playing the game anymore. Every attempt to paint you as the villain failed because your actions were writing a completely different narrative. And the people watching, the ones with eyes to see and minds still functioning, they noticed the contrast. They saw someone calm, surrounded by someone chaotic. They saw someone building while others were busy destroying. They saw someone focused on the future while others were stuck rewriting the past. This is where you became dangerous to every manipulator in the vicinity, because you proved that the best defense against lies is a life well lived, that the most effective response to slander is success, that the ultimate revenge is becoming so unbothered that even thinking about them feels like a downgrade. You showed an entire generation that you don't have to clear your name when your life is doing the talking, that you don't have to defend your character to people who were never interested in truth anyway, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is absolutely nothing except keep rising. And here's what's making them lose sleep at night. They can't compete with your peace. They can't match your progress. They can't replicate your growth because they're still stuck in the drama while you've graduated to a different frequency entirely. Your composure isn't just impressive, it's impossible for them to understand because they've never operated from a place of genuine confidence. They've only known performance, manipulation, control. But you're operating from alignment, from self-respect, from a foundation so solid that their storms can't even reach you anymore. That's not just a personal victory. That's a generational shift in how people understand power. Before you handled that betrayal the way you did, people were accepting far less than they deserved. They were staying in situations that drained them. They were tolerating behavior that violated their boundaries. They were convincing themselves that loyalty meant suffering in silence. But then you showed up and completely reset the standard. You demonstrated what self-respect in action actually looks like. And now there's a whole generation of people who can't unsee what you showed them. They can't go back to accepting scraps because you reminded them they deserve the whole meal. You didn't just walk away from a bad situation. You redefined what walking away looks like. You showed that it's not dramatic, it's not messy, it's not filled with angry speeches or final showdowns. It's simply a decision followed by action. It's blocking the noise and building in silence. It's refusing to participate in cycles that no longer serve you. It's understanding that closure is something you give yourself, not something you extract from people who were never honest to begin with. That clarity, that simplicity, it gave people a roadmap they didn't know they needed. Now watch what happens over the next few years. Watch how many people start referencing your approach when they face similar situations. Watch how many people say I'm doing what they did when they need to protect their peace. Watch how your response becomes the template that others measure themselves against. You didn't write a book. You didn't give a speech. You simply lived your values out loud and trusted that your actions would speak for themselves. And they are. They're speaking in boardrooms and bedrooms, in therapy sessions and coffee shop conversations, in late-night texts between friends, trying to figure out how to handle their own betrayals. The standard you set isn't just about romantic relationships or friendships. It's about self-worth across every area of life. It's about refusing to negotiate on your non-negotiables. It's about understanding that how you let people treat you sets the tone for how the world treats you. It's about recognizing that every time you tolerate disrespect, you're teaching others that disrespecting you is acceptable. You broke that cycle publicly and permanently, and now there's an entire generation watching and learning that they can break it too. That's not just influence, that's legacy. That's the kind of impact that ripples forward for decades. Here's what they never expected. They thought your reaction would define you. They thought how you handled the betrayal would become your story, your identity, your permanent scar. But you flipped the entire script. Instead of letting that betrayal define you, you used it to refine you. Instead of becoming bitter, you became better. Instead of closing off, you opened up to new possibilities. And that transformation, that refusal to let pain turn you into someone you're not, it taught the most powerful lesson of all. That what happens to you doesn't have to determine what happens through you. You showed people that betrayal is information, not identity. That being hurt doesn't mean you have to become hurtful. That experiencing the worst in people doesn't justify bringing out the worst in yourself. You demonstrated that healing is possible without becoming hard, that protecting yourself doesn't require building walls so high that nothing good can get through either, that you can acknowledge pain without letting it rent space in your head indefinitely. This level of emotional intelligence, this ability to process trauma without becoming traumatized, it's rare. And everyone who watched you do it just got a masterclass in resilience. The younger generation especially needed to see this. They needed to see someone get knocked down and get back up without pretending it didn't hurt. They needed to see someone set boundaries without becoming cruel. They needed to see someone walk away from toxicity without making it their entire personality. They needed proof that you can honor your pain and choose growth at the same time, that you can feel everything and still choose wisely. That strength isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about processing them in ways that don't destroy you or everyone around you. You became that proof simply by living through your healing process with integrity intact. And now, here's the ripple effect that's already in motion. There are people who watched you handle that betrayal, who are now handling their own situations differently because of you. There are people setting boundaries they would have never set before because you normalized it. There are people choosing peace over drama because you showed them it's possible. There are people refusing to shrink themselves to make others comfortable because you demonstrated that accommodation isn't love. Your impact isn't theoretical. It's happening in real time across thousands of lives you'll never directly touch, but have already transformed. Something changed the moment you handled that betrayal with grace instead of rage. Something fundamental shifted in how people perceive power, strength, and justice. Before, the cultural narrative said that the person who yells loudest wins, that revenge is sweet, that making them pay is the ultimate victory. But you showed up and obliterated that narrative with a single choice. You chose dignity. And in doing so, you revealed that real power doesn't need volume, real strength doesn't need validation, real justice doesn't need your involvement, because life handles accounts on its own timeline. This shift you triggered, it's not reversible. You can't unsee what you've seen. Once people witness someone handle betrayal with the kind of composure you demonstrated, they can't go back to believing that emotional explosions are strength. They can't return to thinking that revenge plots are power moves. They can't convince themselves that dragging someone through the mud is winning. You reset the entire framework by simply refusing to play the game everyone expected you to play. And now that framework is spreading like wildfire through social circles, online communities, and personal philosophies across the globe. The beauty of what you did is that it doesn't require anyone to believe you. It doesn't need co-signing or validation. The results speak for themselves. You walked away and built a better life. You set boundaries and found peace. You chose yourself and discovered that you were the only permission slip you ever needed. That's empirical evidence that can't be argued with. That's proof that your method works even when people don't understand it. And proof is more powerful than any argument because it transcends opinion and enters the realm of undeniable reality. Now watch as this shift continues to accelerate. Watch as more people start choosing silence over explanation. Watch as boundaries become non-negotiable instead of flexible. Watch as self-respect becomes the baseline instead of the exception. You didn't just change your life, you altered the trajectory of a cultural conversation about what strength looks like in the face of betrayal. You became the evidence that grace is more dangerous than rage, that composure is more threatening than chaos, that living well is more devastating than any revenge plot ever could be. That's not just personal growth, that's cultural evolution, and you're the catalyst. They tried to write you off. They tried to paint you as the problem, the drama, the one who couldn't handle reality. But here's what happens when truth has time to breathe. Eventually, the smoke clears. Eventually, the lies lose their luster. Eventually, patterns emerge that validate everything you knew but didn't need to prove. And when that moment comes, when the people who doubted you start seeing exactly what you saw all along, your legacy is already written, not by you, not by them, but by the countless lives you impacted simply by standing firm in your truth. This legacy isn't something you can put on a resume. It's not measurable in traditional metrics, but it's more valuable than any accolade because it's written in the changed perspectives of people who needed to see what you showed them. It's embedded in the strengthened spines of those who watched you refuse to bend. It's alive in the protected boundaries of people who learned from your example that no is a complete sentence. It's thriving in the peaceful exits of those who discovered through you that walking away isn't giving up, it's growing up. Your legacy is human transformation happening in real time because you had the courage to handle your pain with integrity. And here's what makes this legacy unshakable. It's not dependent on you defending it. It doesn't require you to remind people of what you did. It doesn't need your participation to continue spreading. The lesson you taught through your actions has taken on a life of its own. It's being passed from friend to friend, parent to child, mentor to student. It's showing up in conversations you'll never hear, decisions you'll never witness, moments of clarity you'll never know you sparked. That's the power of leading by example. The ripple effects are infinite and unstoppable because truth doesn't need maintenance. It needs expression, and you expressed it perfectly. They can't erase this legacy because it's not written in words they can edit or stories they can rewrite. It's written in the transformed lives of real people who saw you handle the worst and still choose your best. It's carved into the consciousness of a generation that needed proof that dignity isn't dead, that self-respect isn't selfish, that boundaries aren't cruel. You became that proof not by preaching but by practicing, not by telling but by showing, not by demanding recognition but by deserving it through consistent character even when nobody was watching. That's a legacy that outlives gossip, transcends drama, and stands the test of time. So here we are, chosen one. At the end of this breakdown, but just the beginning of your impact's true reach. Because what you did when you handled that betrayal with grace instead of rage, with boundaries instead of bitterness, with silence instead of slander, it's still echoing, it's still teaching, it's still transforming. Every person who witnessed your response is now carrying a piece of that wisdom forward into their own lives, their own battles, their own moments of decision. You didn't just survive betrayal, you turned it into a textbook that an entire generation is now studying. The way you stood up wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive, it wasn't dramatic, it was simply unmovable. And that unwavering commitment to your own peace, to your own standards, to your own growth, it spoke volumes that no words could ever match. You proved that standing up doesn't always look like fighting back. Sometimes it looks like walking away. Sometimes it looks like building walls where there used to be open doors. Sometimes it looks like choosing your future over someone else's comfort. You redefined what strength means in real time, and the world took notes. Now here's your mission moving forward. Don't shrink. Don't second-guess the boundaries you set or the distance you created. Don't let anyone convince you that your peace was too expensive or your standards were too high, because every time you stand firm in what you know is right, you give permission to someone else to do the same. Every time you refuse to negotiate your worth, you remind others theirs isn't negotiable either. Every time you choose yourself without apology, you show the path for others who are still lost in the fog of people-pleasing and self-abandonment. If this message resonates with your soul, Drop 777 inches the comments right now. Hit that like button and subscribe, because this mission needs voices like yours amplifying it. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their silence was powerful, their boundaries were justified, their peace was worth protecting. We're not just building a community. We're building a movement of people who refuse to sacrifice their dignity for anyone's comfort. You're part of something bigger now, chosen one. The way you handled that betrayal just became chapter 1 in a story that's going to echo through generations. Own it, honor it, and never apologize for choosing yourself when the world expected you to choose chaos. You taught us all how to stand up. Now keep standing.